Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, the stage lights will come up to begin our performance. Please turn off any cell phones, pagers, or other handheld devices now, or place them in silent mode. Copyright restrictions forbid the use of any device to record any portion of the performance. In the unlikely event of an emergency, please use the marked exits in the front or rear of the theater. If the power fails, emergency lights will be turned on automatically. Restrooms are located to the left and right of the theater entrance. There will be 2 10-minute intermissions. No food or drink may be brought into the theater, and no smoking is permitted at any time. And now, please enjoy the show.
Right, Edith.
Yes, ma'am.
Now you better go fetch the ice bucket.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you manage to get the ice out of the little tin trays?
Why, yes, ma'am. It was a bit of a struggle, but it's all right now.
And you filled the trays up back again with water?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good, Edith. You're making giant strides.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Madam Arcadi, Mrs. Bradman and I will have our coffee in here after dinner. Mr. Condamine and Dr. Bradman will have theirs in the dining room. Is that quite clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you're serving dinner tonight, Edith, try to do it calmly and methodically.
Yes, ma'am.
As we are not in the Navy, and it is unnecessary to do everything at the double.
Yes, ma'am.
Now go get the ice.
Yes, ma'am.
Not at a run, Edith.
Yes, ma'am.
No sign of the advancing horde?
Not yet.
No ice.
It's coming. You mustn't mind if everything is slow in motion tonight. I'm trying to teach Edith not to be so fleet of foot.
I shall welcome it. The past few days have been extremely agitating. What do you suppose induced Agnes to go and leave us and get married?
The reason was becoming increasingly obvious, dear.
Yes, but in these days, nobody thinks anything of that sort of thing. She could have gone to the cottage hospital, had it, and popped back in again.
Her social life would have been seriously undermined.
We must keep Edith in the house more.
That's right, Edith. Put it on the table.
Yes, ma'am.
I seem to have forgotten my cigarette case on my dressing table. Edith, could you get it?
Yes, sir.
There now.
You took her by surprise.
Dry martini, I think, don't you?
Yes, darling. I imagine Madame Arcati would want something sweeter.
Oh, we'll have this one for ourselves anyhow.
Oh, dear.
Oh, what's the matter?
I'm afraid tonight's going to be awful.
It should probably be funny, but not awful.
You must promise not to catch my eye if I giggle, and I'm very likely to. It will ruin everything.
You must not. You must be dead serious and, at least possible, a little intense. We can't hurt the old girl's feelings, no matter how funny she is.
But why the Bradmans, darling? He's a skeptic as well as we are. Oh, he'll probably say the most dreadful things.
I've warned him. Plus, there must be more than 3 people, and we couldn't have the vicar and his wife because A, they're dreary, and B, they wouldn't approve of it at all. It had to be the Bradmans. Thank you, Edith. Steady does it.
Yes, sir.
We must have her walk about with a book on her head like they do in deportment lessons. Here, try this.
Lovely, dry as a bone.
To the unseen.
I must say, that's a wonderful title.
If this evening's a success, I shall start my first draft tomorrow.
Was Elvira a help to you? When you were thinking something out, I mean.
Every once in a while when she concentrated. But she didn't concentrate very often.
I do wish I'd known her.
wonder if you would have liked her.
I'm sure I would. As you talk of her, she sounds enchanting. Yes, I'm sure I would have liked her. You know, never for an instant I felt the least bit jealous of her, and that's a good sign.
Poor Elvira.
Does it still hurt when you think of her?
No, not really. Although sometimes I wish it had. I feel rather guilty.
I wonder, if I died before you grew tired of me, if you would forget me so soon.
Oh, what a horrible thing to say.
No, I find it interesting.
Well, to begin with, I haven't forgotten Elvira. I remember her quite distinctly. I remember how remarkable she was, and how maddening. I remember how badly she played old games, and how cross she got when she didn't win. I remember how her gay charm when she achieved her own way over something, and her extreme acidity when she didn't. I remember her physical attractiveness, which was tremendous, and her spiritual integrity, which was nil.
You can't remember something that was nil.
Well, I remember how morally untidy she was.
Was she more physically attractive than I am?
Oh, what a tiresome question, my dear. Fully deserves the wrong answer.
You really are very sweet.
Thank you.
And a little naive, too.
Why?
Because you imagine I mind Elvira being more physically attractive than I am.
I would suspect that all women would if it were true. Or perhaps maybe I'm a little old-fashioned in my way of female psychology.
Not exactly old-fashioned, darling. Just a bit didactic.
Well, how do you mean?
It's didactic to attribute to one type of defects in another type.
I love you, my love.
I know you do, but I want to describe it as a first fine careless rapture.
Would you like it to be?
Good God, no!
Well, wasn't that a shade too vehement?
We're neither of us adolescents, Charles. We're neither of us led exactly prim lives, have we? We both been married before. Careless rapture at this stage would be incongruous and embarrassing.
Like I mentioned before, I love you, my love.
Poor Elvira.
Oh, didn't that light come rattly kiss mollify you at all?
You're very annoying. You know you are. When I said poor Elvira, it came from the heart. How you must have bewildered her so horribly.
Oh, don't I ever bewilder you at all?
Never for an instant. I know every trick.
Well then, we must get a divorce immediately.
Put my glass down. There's a darling.
She certainly had a talent for the living. It was a pity she died so young.
Poor Elvira.
That remark is getting monotonous.
Poor Charles, then.
Oh, that's better.
And later on, I expect poor Ruth.
I was devoted to Elvira. We were married for 5 years, and she died, and I missed her tremendously. That was 7 years ago, and I have, with your help, my love, risen above the whole thing.
Admirable. But if tragedy shall darken our lives, I still say with prophetic foreboding, poor Ruth.
Oh, that must be the Bradmans.
It might be Madame Arcati.
Oh, no. She'll come on a bicycle. She always goes everywhere on a bicycle.
That's very spirited of the old girl.
Shall I go, or should we let Edith have a fling?
Wait a minute and see what happens.
Perhaps she didn't hear.
She's probably on one knee in a pre-sprinting position, waiting for Cook to open the door.
Steady, Edith!
Yes, sir. Doctor and Mrs. Bradman.
Good to see you. We're not late, are we? I just got back from the hospital about a half hour ago.
Oh, no, Madame Arcati isn't here yet.
That must have been her we passed coming down the hill. I said I thought it was.
Then it won't be long. I'm so glad you were able to come.
We've been looking forward to it. I'm really quite excited.
Violet will be good, I assure you. I made her promise.
There wasn't any need. I'm absolutely thrilled. I've only seen Madame Arcotti 2 or 3 times in the village. I mean, I've never seen her do anything peculiar, if you know what I mean.
Dry martini.
Oh, by all means.
She certainly is a peculiar woman. It wasn't for about a chance remark by the vicar about seeing her up on the knoll on Midsummer's Eve that made me realize she was a psychic at all. I began to make some inquiries, and turns out she's been a professional in London for years.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Someone doing it as a profession.
I believe it's very lucrative.
Do you believe in it, Mrs. Condamine? Do you think there's anything really genuine about it at all?
I'm afraid not. However, I do find it interesting how easily people allow themselves to be deceived.
But she must believe it herself, mustn't she? Or is the whole business a fake?
I suspect the worst. A real professional charlatan. Oh, that's what I'm hoping for anyhow. The character I'm playing for in my book must be a complete imposter. The whole story depends on it.
So what exactly are you expecting to get from her?
Jargon, principally. A few tricks of the trade. I haven't been to a seance in years, and I'd like to refresh my memory.
Oh, well, so this is not entirely new to you.
Oh, no. When I was a little boy, an aunt of mine used to come and stay with us. She believed she was a medium and would go off in the most elaborate trances after dinner. My mother was fascinated by it.
Was she convinced?
Good heavens, no. She just naturally disliked my aunt and wanted to make a fool of her.
Do you think she tells fortunes? I love having my fortune told.
I expect so.
I was told once at the pier on Southsea that I was surrounded by lilies and a golden 7. It worried me for days.
Well, we all must be serious, you know, and pretend we believe implicitly, or she won't play.
Plus, she might really mind, and it would be cruel to upset her.
I shall be as good as gold.
Have you ever attended her, Doctor? Professionally, I mean.
Yes, she had the influenza last January, and she'd been here just a bit more than a year, you know. I must say she was most decidedly unpsychic at the time. I always thought she was an authoress.
Ah, yes. We first met as colleagues at one of Miss Wilmont's Sunday evenings at Sandgate.
What sort of books does she write?
2 sorts. Rather whimsical children's stories about enchanted woods with a highly conventional flora and fauna, and enthusiastic biographies of minor royalties. Very sentimental, reverent, and extremely funny.
Here she is.
She knows, doesn't she, about tonight? You're not springing this on her.
It was all arranged last week. I told her how profoundly interested I was in anything that had to do with the occult, and she blossomed like a rose.
I really am quite nervous, as though I'm going to give a speech.
You go meet her, darling.
I pinned my bike up against that little bush. It will be perfectly all right if no one touches it.
Madame Arcotti!
Thank you for coming all this way.
Oh, my dear Madame Acati.
I'm afraid I'm rather late, but I had a sudden presentiment I was going to have a puncture. So I went back to fetch my pump, and then, of course, I didn't have a puncture at all.
Well, perhaps you'll have one on the way home.
Dr. Bradman, the man with the gentle hat.
Delighted to see you looking so well. May I present my wife?
Oh, we're old friends. We meet coming out of shops.
Would you like a cocktail?
If it's a dry martini, yes. If it's a concoction, no. Experience has taught me to be very wary of concoctions.
It is a dry martini.
Oh, how delicious. It was wonderful cycling through the woods this evening. I was deafened with birdsong.
It's been lovely all day.
Ah, but the evening's the time, mark my words. Oh, thank you. Cheers.
Don't you find it tiring, bicycling everywhere?
Oh, on the contrary, it stimulates me. I was getting far too sedentary in London. That horrid little flat with the dim lights. They had to be dim, you know. The clients expect it.
Well, I must say, I find bicycling very exhausting.
Oh, steady rhythm, that's what counts. Once you get the knack of it, you need never look back. On you get and away you go.
But the hills, Madame Arcotti, pushing up those awful hills.
Oh, just knack again. Down with your head, up with your heart, and you're over the top in a flash and skimming down the other side like a dragonfly. This is the best dry martini I've had for years.
Would you like another?
Oh, certainly. You're a very clever man. Anybody can write books, but it takes a real artist to make a dry martini that's dry enough.
Are you writing anything nowadays, Madame Arcotti?
Every morning, regular as clockwork, 7 till 1.
Is it a novel or a memoir?
It's a children's book. I have to finish it by the end of October to catch the Christmas sales. It's about very small animals. The hero is a mouse beetle. I had to give up my memoir on Princess Paliatani because she died in April. I talked with her about it the other day and she implored me to go on with it, but I really hadn't the heart.
You talked to her about it the other day?
Yes, through my control, of course. She sounded quite irritable.
Well, it's funny to think of people in the spirit world being irritable, isn't it? I mean, one can hardly imagine it, can one?
We have no real guarantee that the afterlife will be any less exasperating than the one we have, don't we?
Well, Mr. Condamine, how can you?
Dinner is served, Mum.
Thank you, Edith. Shall we?
No red meat, I hope?
There's meat, but I don't think it would be very red. Would you rather have an egg or something?
No, thank you. I just make it a rule never to eat red meat before I work. It sometimes has an odd effect.
What sort of effect?
Oh, nothing of the least importance. If it isn't very red, it probably won't matter much. Anyhow, we'll risk it.
Come along, Mrs. Bradman. Madame Arcotti, you will be on Charles's right.
Oh, perfect. Oh, yes. Even as a child, she had the most violent, destructive tempers. Very inbred, you know.
Yes, she must have been.
My control was very scared the other day when we were talking. I could hear it in her voice. After all, she's only a child.
Do you always have a child as a control?
Generally, they're the best. Some mediums prefer Indians, of course, but I've always personally found them unreliable.
In what way unreliable?
Well, for one thing, they're frightfully lazy, and also, when faced with any sort of difficulties, they're apt to go off into their own tribal language, which is naturally unintelligible. No, children are undoubtedly more satisfactory, particularly once they get to know you and understand your ways. Daphne has worked with me for years.
And she goes on being a child. I mean, she doesn't show signs of growing any older.
Time values on the other side are utterly different than ours.
Do you feel funny when you go off into a trance?
In what way funny?
Mrs. Bradman didn't mean funny in the comedic implication. I think she meant odd or strange.
Well, the word was an unfortunate choice.
I'm sure. I'm very sorry.
Oh, it's nothing of the least importance. Don't apologize.
When did you first discover you had these extraordinary powers?
When I was quite tiny. I had my first trance when I was 4 years old, and my first ectoplasmic manifestation when I was 5 and a half. What an exciting day that was. I shall never forget it. Of course, the manifestation itself was quite small and of very short duration, but for a child of my tender years, it was most gratifying.
Can you foretell the future?
Certainly not. I disapprove of fortune tellers most strongly.
Really? Why?
Too much guesswork and fate mixed up with it. Even if the gift is genuine, and it only very occasionally is, you can't count on it.
Why not?
Time again. Time is the reef upon which all of our frail mystic ships are wrecked.
Do you mean because it has yet been proved that the past, the present, and the future are not one and all the same thing?
I long ago came to the conclusion that nothing has ever been definitely proved about anything.
How very wise. Leave the dining room table just as it is for tonight, Edith. We'll clear it in the morning.
Yes, ma'am.
And we do not want to be disturbed for the next hour or so for any reason whatsoever. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
And if someone should telephone, say we are out and take a message.
Yes, ma'am.
Unless it's an urgent call for George.
Oh, unless it's an urgent call for Dr. Bradman.
Yes, ma'am.
There's not likely to be one, is there?
No, I don't think so.
Once I'm off, it won't matter much, but any interruption in the preliminary stages might be disastrous.
Well, I wish the men would hurry up. I'm rather excited.
Oh, please don't be. It just makes everything much, much more difficult.
Well, Madame Arcati, the time is drawing near.
Who knows? It may be receding.
How very true.
I hope you're in the mood, Madame Arcati.
It isn't a question of mood, it's a question of concentration.
You must forgive us for being impatient. We can perfectly easily wait, though, if you're not quite ready to start.
Oh, nonsense, my dear. I'm absolutely ready. Hi-ho, hi-ho. To work we go.
Is there anything you need us to do?
Do?
Yes, hold hands or something?
Oh, well, that will come later. First, a few deep breaths